Black CEO, mocked by billionaire family at luxury party hours. Later she ended, their $30. B. Empire. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's get back to the story. Who the hell invited her? The words sliced through the ballroom like a cracked glass. Laughter followed high-pitched, rehearsed, cruel. Under the golden chandelier, a woman in a white gown froze mid-step. Not because she was afraid, but because she'd heard that tone before, the tone that mistook quiet for lesser. Amara Lewis turned her head slowly. The red-dressed woman pointing at her still laughed, clutching her husband's arm, unaware that the person she mocked had more power than everyone in that room combined. Champagne flutes clinked. Flashbulbs popped. A pianist in the corner hesitated, then kept playing like nothing happened. The crowd pretended not to see, but they saw everything. Amara stood still, composed. Her partner Malik whispered beside her, "Ignore them." She did. But silence doesn't mean surrender. It means calculation. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now back to Amara. She took one slow breath. The woman in red Victoria Vaughn smirked, tilting her diamond necklace like it was armor. "So bold of the help to mingle tonight," she said loud enough for half the hall to hear. More laughter. Even the old man beside her, Richard Vaughn, patriarch of Vaughn Capital, joined in. Amara's gaze didn't waver. She raised her glass slightly. "To courage," she said quietly. Victoria blinked. "Excuse me, courage," Amara repeated. "It takes some to wear cruelty so comfortably." For a moment, silence reclaimed the room. Then another round of chuckles broke it. The string quartet stumbled on the next note. A server dropped a tray of hors d'oeuvre. And in that single suspended second, you could almost hear the future shifting, because what they didn't know was that this woman, the one they mocked for existing in their air, was the very person deciding whether their empire would survive tomorrow. The night wasn't over, but the balance of power had already begun to move. The laughter lingered, echoing between chandeliers like cheap perfume that refused to fade. Amara stood still beneath it all, composed, polished, unbothered to the naked eye. But behind that stillness, something ancient stirred memory. She had seen this room before. Not this exact ballroom, but its energy, the quiet cruelty wrapped in politeness, the way people smiled while erasing you. At 22, she'd walked into her first investors' gala and been asked to fetch water by a man who would later beg for her funding. She didn't raise her voice then either. She learned that silence could be sharper than any retort. Back in the present, Victoria Vaughn turned away triumphant in her own performance. Her husband, the heir apparent of Vaughn Capital, muttered, "Some people just don't know where they belong." His father, Richard, laughed that old easy arrogance of someone who'd never been told no. They clinked glasses again, dismissing Amara as if she were air. Malik leaned closer. "You good." Amara's lips curved slightly. "Better than them." From across the room, a waiter, the same young man who'd been watching earlier, caught her eye. His expression said what the crowd wouldn't: "This isn't right." She gave him the faintest nod, an unspoken "I see you." The band played on. A swirl of gowns and tuxedos passed like waves, oblivious. But even beauty can't hide discomfort. The tension in the room was real now. You could feel it ripple under the surface, the way a storm hums before lightning. Near the stage, the event coordinator whispered to a reporter, "That woman's Lumatech, isn't she?" The reporter frowned, checking her tablet. "No way." "That's her." She glanced up, suddenly aware she might be standing inside the headline of tomorrow. Amara took a sip of champagne, eyes steady on the Vaughns. She didn't need to correct them. Not yet. People reveal themselves fastest when they believe they're safe. Malik's hand brushed hers, subtle reassurance. "They'll regret it," he murmured. "They already have," she replied, her voice calm, quiet, decisive, the kind that doesn't announce revenge, it plans it. A flash from a camera caught her face, poised, unreadable. The photo would circulate later, tagged, "Unknown woman endures humiliation at Billionaire Gala." But by then, unknown would no longer apply. She set her glass down on the marble ledge, each motion deliberate. Every empire falls, some just don't know the countdown has begun. And tonight, the timer had already started ticking. The ballroom glittered, but not everyone inside sparkled. The deeper the night went, the sharper the divide became the polished elite at one end, and the invisible ones, serving, observing, enduring. Amara stood between both worlds. She looked like a guest, but they treated her like a misstep in their symmetry. Victoria Vaughn raised her voice again, the kind of laugh that asked for an audience. "I swear," she said, eyes cutting toward Amara, "these events get more inclusive every year." A few polite chuckles followed, nervous and ugly. Richard Vaughn joined in, glass in hand, his tie, loosened confidence slurred with champagne. "Let her be, darling. She's just trying to see how the real world celebrates." Someone whispered, "That's cold," but no one challenged him. Amara felt the sting, not from the insult she'd long grown immune, but from the ease of it, the comfort of mockery, how natural it came to them. Malik's voice was low. "Say the word. We can leave." "No," she said, calm. "We stay. I want them to see who they're laughing at." Across the room, the young waiter Elias carried a tray of champagne, moving cautiously between clusters of laughter. He passed near Victoria's table, eyes darting toward Amara again. For a split second, their gazes met, and it grounded her. She wasn't alone in seeing the wrong. Victoria reached out suddenly, snagging Elias's sleeve. "Careful," she hissed. "You almost spilled on my husband." Her voice was sharp enough to turn heads. Elias stammered, "Sorry, ma'am." "Sorry won't pay for silk," she snapped. Then, smirking toward Amara, she added, "Maybe your friend over there can help. She looks familiar with service work." The words landed like glass shattering in slow motion. A few guests gasped quietly. Others turned away. Amara stepped forward, one calm step, then another. Victoria blinked, suddenly less sure of herself. Amara's tone was measured, soft enough to sting harder. "You should be more careful," she said. Victoria crossed her arms. "Excuse me. With your assumptions," Amara continued. "They age poorly, like champagne left open too long." Gasps rippled again, the sound of wealth encountering consequence. Richard Vaughn forced a chuckle, trying to reclaim control. "All right, everyone, lighten up. It's a party, not a protest." But Amara was already turning away, her phone in hand, the glow of the screen catching the corner of her eye. One text, one command. "Activate protocol, confirm exposure." Her assistant's reply came seconds later. "Confirmed. Files queued. Awaiting your cue." The storm was still quiet, but lightning had just been invited in. The laughter faded into polite murmurs. A string quartet tried to reclaim control of the room, but the melody couldn't mask what had shifted. The Vaughns returned to their table, pretending not to glance back. Yet something in their posture betrayed them, that fragile awareness when mockery starts to taste like fear. Amara didn't chase their gaze. She didn't need to. Her silence filled the space louder than their voices ever could. The guests nearby felt it too, the subtle pull of dignity reclaiming ground. Malik leaned closer, voice barely above a whisper. "They don't even know they've already lost." Amara's reply was calm, surgical. "They built their world on perception. I'm about to change what people see." Her phone buzzed once. A message from her assistant, Rena. Media outlets confirmed attendance. All cameras flagged. Protocol Alpha ready on command. Amara slipped the phone back into her clutch without looking. Her reflection in the glass wall behind the bar stared back, the same calm eyes that once looked into rejection letters, racist loan denials, and boardrooms that mistook her brilliance for luck. The memory pressed in that day 12 years ago when an investor had leaned back in his chair and said, "You're impressive, Miss Lewis, but our partners prefer faces they can trust." She'd smiled then, too. The same restrained, devastating smile she wore now. From across the room, Victoria whispered something to her husband, her lips tight, her confidence cracking. The camera flashes were catching everything. One photo of a billionaire's wife sneering at a black woman in a designer ballroom, that alone could end a dynasty. Elias, the young waiter, passed by again, slower this time. He paused just long enough to whisper, "That wasn't right, ma'am. I'm sorry for them." Amara's eyes softened. "You did nothing wrong," she said quietly. "You just witnessed the truth." He nodded, unsure, but the moment steadied him. It steadied her too, the reminder that respect didn't need money to exist. Over the microphone, the host announced the next segment. "A few words from our corporate partners." Richard Vaughn smiled, rising from his seat. He assumed he'd be next, but the coordinator hurried toward him, whispering urgently. Richard frowned, then turned sharply toward Amara, because now, for the first time all night, he realized the woman they'd mocked wasn't just a guest. She was on the program, and in 5 minutes she'd be standing on that stage with a microphone, not to ask for permission, but to take back the narrative entirely. The ballroom lights dimmed slightly, casting everything in a soft amber glow. It should have been beautiful, but now it felt like anticipation, the quiet before something inevitable. Guests leaned toward one another, whispers fluttering like moths. Who is she? Wasn't she with Vaughn Capital? No, someone said she runs something huge. Victoria tried to laugh it off, swirling her champagne. People are so dramatic, she said, though her voice cracked on the last word. Richard Vaughn didn't respond. He stared toward the stage, brow furrowed, as if trying to piece together a puzzle that had been in front of him all night. A coordinator approached Amara with a gentle smile. "Miss Lewis, we're ready for you." Malik stepped aside, straightening her shawl. "You sure you want to do this here?" She met his gaze, calm as ever. "This is where the insult happened. This is where the truth begins." Every movement was slow, deliberate, the kind of composure that made people nervous because it looked like control. Amara ascended the short marble steps to the stage as the host's voice filled the room. "Please welcome our next speaker, Miss Amara Lewis, CEO of Lumatech Holdings." The words struck like thunder dressed in velvet. The audience froze. Some gasped. Others blinked, unsure if they'd misheard. Victoria's hand went rigid around her glass. It slipped, shattering against the floor. Elias from the corner stopped mid-step, his mouth parting slightly in awe. Richard Vaughn's expression curdled into disbelief. No, that's impossible," his son whispered. "She's that Amara Lewis, the one buying into our Richard cut him off." "Not anymore, she isn't." But even he didn't sound convinced. Amara reached the podium. She didn't tap the microphone or clear her throat. She didn't need to. Her voice carried effortlessly steady, resonant years of boardrooms and conferences distilled into one unshakable tone. "Good evening. I wasn't planning to speak tonight. But then again, life rarely asks for permission before it teaches a lesson." The room was still. Every camera phone rose like a forest of judgment. Victoria's face was pale now, every inch of her rehearsed superiority gone. Richard forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "She's bluffing," he muttered under his breath. "This is PR nonsense." Amara continued gaze, sweeping the room, every guest, every waiter, every mask of civility. "Some of you laughed earlier. You didn't know who I was. You thought you were safe behind your last name. That's the problem with comfort, it blinds you to consequence." You could hear the ice melt in glasses. The whole ballroom had shifted. No one breathed too loud. Amara smiled faintly, not out of vengeance but certainty. "Tonight isn't about me," she said. "It's about what happens when arrogance forgets accountability." And as her words hung in the golden air, everyone knew the real event had just begun. Silence has a texture. In that ballroom, it felt like glass, beautiful, brittle, ready to shatter. Amara stood behind the podium, a single spotlight framing her like a verdict. The crowd leaned in, not breathing, not blinking. Somewhere near the back, Victoria Vaughn's whisper cracked through the tension. "She's making this personal," Richard hissed back. "It is personal. She's trying to humiliate us." Amara's gaze flicked toward them, calm but cutting. "Humiliation only exists when the truth is inconvenient," she said. And somehow, though she hadn't raised her voice, the microphone caught it perfectly. A ripple went through the audience. She had heard them. She was answering them live. Richard Vaughn straightened in his chair. "Turn it off," he snapped to the event staff. But the cameras were already rolling, live-streamed to every investor watching remotely. Every word immortalized. Amara's tone softened, almost intimate. "My company, Lumatech Holdings, entered a $30 billion partnership discussion with Vaughn Capital. A collaboration built on innovation, inclusion, and trust, at least that's what the press release said." She paused. "But trust dies in small moments. Like laughter at someone who doesn't fit your picture of power." Victoria's breath caught. Guests exchanged looks, whispers growing like wind before a storm. Malik stood quietly at the edge of the stage, his expression unreadable but his presence grounding. He'd seen Amara in hundreds of meetings under pressure, under attack. But tonight was different. This wasn't business, this was balance. Elias, the young waiter, set down his tray and slipped his phone out, recording discreetly. He understood what he was witnessing, not revenge but revelation. Amara's words were measured now like a slow cut through marble. "The irony," she said, "is that you invited me here to announce the closing of our merger. Instead, I stand here to announce its end." Gasps. Audible. Sharp. Cameras flashed like lightning strikes. Victoria rose halfway from her chair. "You can't." Amara's eyes found hers. "I already have." Richard slammed his palm against the table. "This is outrageous." Amara didn't flinch. Outrage is what privilege feels when it meets consequence. For a moment, no one moved. Then somewhere near the back, someone started clapping hesitant, then louder until the sound grew into a storm of applause that filled the room. Amara didn't smile. She simply nodded once, letting the weight of it settle. Because this wasn't triumph. It was truth finally standing where mockery used to be. The applause rolled through the ballroom like thunder waking a sleeping city. But under the applause came panic, the kind of fear that only comes to those who have never been held accountable. Richard Vaughn's face went from flushed red to pale white in seconds. He whispered to his aide, "Get corporate on the line now." The aide fumbled for his phone, but the reception died under the noise of hundreds of cameras flashing. Victoria stood trembling behind her polished mask. "This is a mistake," she said, voice sharp but thin. "You're ruining your own reputation, Miss Lewis." Amara turned slightly toward her, still behind the podium. "I don't need to ruin anything. I just need to reveal it." The room hushed again. That line, crisp, clean, lethal, landed like a blade. Malik stepped forward, slipping a small tablet onto the podium. A live feed flickered to life on the ballroom screen behind Amara, a boardroom at Vaughn Capital's headquarters. Their executives' faces stiff, watching in real time. "Good evening," Amara said, addressing both the room and the screen. "I understand you're all here. Let's make this transparent for everyone." She tapped the tablet. A series of internal emails filled the projection, short, cruel, and familiar. Image mismatch, avoid joint branding photos. Optics risk her background might alienate conservative investors. Let her feel welcome, but remember she's replaceable. The audience gasped. Victoria took a step back, her composure fracturing. "Where did you get those?" Amara's reply was calm. "Your assistant accidentally CC'd my general counsel 3 weeks ago." You could feel the air leave the room. It wasn't just embarrassment anymore, it was exposure. Every guest, every donor, every journalist saw it for what it was, systemic arrogance. Richard rose halfway from his seat. "This is confidential material. You're breaking every clause," Amara cut in smoothly. "No, Mr. Vaughn. You already broke it the moment you turned partnership into prejudice." The crowd didn't cheer this time. They were stunned watching wealth lose its camouflage in real time. Elias, still filming, whispered under his breath, "She's rewriting the room." Amara looked out over the sea of faces, the same faces that had laughed an hour earlier. Her expression was unreadable. "I don't seek applause," she said. "I seek clarity." The live feed cut. The screen went dark. But the silence that followed was alive, charged with reckoning. Victoria slumped back into her chair. Richard's hands shook as he reached for his glass and missed. Amara stepped away from the podium, her heels echoing across the marble. Each step sounded like a clock striking the end of an era. The ballroom lights suddenly felt too bright, a cruel spotlight on those who had always controlled the stage. The laughter that once filled the air was gone, replaced by the hum of whispered disbelief. Phones were out recording, streaming, memorializing the fall of a dynasty in real time. Amara didn't rush her steps. She moved with a patience that made people nervous, the patience of someone who already knew how this night would end. Malik followed half a step behind eyes, scanning the crowd, measuring every reaction. At the Vaughn table, chaos had begun to bloom. Richard barked orders into his phone, only to hear, "Sir, we're locked out of the system." Access denied. His voice cracked. "What do you mean, locked out?" Victoria turned to him, panic, sharpening her tone. "Richard, what's happening?" He stared at his phone, unblinking as the screen displayed a message none of them expected. "Access suspended by Lumatech Oversight Protocol." Victoria's mouth opened, then closed again. "She can't do that." "Can she?" Amara's voice floated from across the room. "I can. You signed joint control privileges during our due diligence phase. You should really read your contracts." The audience murmured, half awe, half disbelief. Someone whispered, "She's dismantling them live." Elias, standing by the bar, kept filming, eyes wide. For once, the story wasn't about power abused, it was about power reclaimed. Amara stopped near their table, facing the family directly for the first time all night. "You called me the help," she said softly. "But the truth is I was helping you stay solvent, helping you look ethical, helping your brand survive scrutiny. That help ends tonight." Richard's voice trembled. "You're making enemies you can't afford." Amara met his stare. "You already made me one when you mistook silence for permission." Gasps spread again. The reporters in the back scribbled furiously, flashes popping like tiny explosions. Malik handed her a sleek black folder, the final blow. Amara opened it, pulling out a single printed document with Lumatech's crest stamped in gold. Effective immediately, she said, all joint ventures accounts and pending acquisitions with Vaughn Capital are terminated. Their assets tied to Lumatech operations will be frozen pending audit. Victoria sank into her seat, whispering to no one, "This can't be happening." But it was. Because in that moment, beneath chandeliers worth millions, a black woman who had been mocked as invisible made an empire disappear, not with shouting, not with anger, but with precision. Amara turned to the audience, her voice steady. Money doesn't define integrity. Power doesn't protect arrogance. Tonight, remember that both can vanish the same way they were built, through a choice. And as she walked off the stage, that truth hung heavier than gold. The ballroom doors began to close, as if sealing the moment into history. The air buzzed not from music or chatter, but from disbelief. Every camera stayed locked on Amara, every face fixed in that strange mix of shame and awe reserved for those witnessing justice in real time. Victoria Vaughn stood slowly, her voice brittle. "You'll regret this," she said, trying to gather her shattered pride into words. "We'll sue. We'll destroy your name." Amara turned to her, not angry, not amused, just infinitely calm. "My name built yours," she said. "Without Lumitech Vaughn, capital is a headline waiting to happen, and not the kind you can buy your way out of." Her words didn't echo. They cut. Clean, cold, final. Richard's phone buzzed again, not salvation, just confirmation. He stared at the screen as message after message poured in. "Investors withdrawing funds, joint projects on hold, market response, negative 27%. He looked up, dazed. You just tanked a $30 billion deal in front of the press." Amara's answer was almost gentle. "No, Richard. You did that the moment you forgot respect was part of the contract." The crowd didn't move. No one dared to fill the silence. Even the servers had stopped walking. Elias, still filming from the corner, whispered under his breath, "She's rewriting history." Amara walked toward the edge of the stage, pausing by the table of investors who had once praised the Vaughns. Their eyes dropped to the floor. "The world is full of people who underestimate quiet," she said. "They think silence is weakness. They don't realize silence is study it, listens, learns, and waits." She turned back to face the room, her posture regal, her presence undeniable. When you spend your life being talked over, you learn to make your truth impossible to ignore. The audience erupted, not cheers, not chaos, but applause that grew from hesitation into thunder. Victoria's makeup streaked down her face. Richard slumped into his chair, muttering to himself, "She'll destroy us." Malik stepped beside Amara, whispering, "She already did." With one sentence, Amara raised a hand, gently quieting the applause. Her voice softened, almost intimate now. "What happened here tonight isn't revenge, it's reflection. Power should reveal character, not replace it." And in that instant, everyone in that ballroom, from billionaires to busboys, understood that power had just changed hands. Not because she demanded it, but because she had always owned it. The sound of applause dissolved into murmurs then, into the kind of silence that feels like aftermath. Reporters rushed toward the exits, phones pressed to ears, voices trembling as they dictated history in real time. Within minutes, news alerts began to bloom like wildfire across every screen in the room. Breaking: Lumitech CEO terminates $30B Vaughn merger live on stage. Vaughn Capital faces internal audit and trading freeze. Richard Vaughn's phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't investors. It was his board. And they weren't asking questions. They were giving orders. "Resign," one message read. "Effective immediately." Victoria snatched the phone from his hand, scanning it in disbelief. "They can't just," Amara's voice, calm and unshaken, cut through the space between them. "They can. Because integrity still matters somewhere." The words landed like a gavel. Malik stepped closer to the edge of the stage, nodding toward the screens as live financial tickers began to update. Vaughn Capital's stock price plummeted in real time. Each red arrow pointed not just downward, but toward consequence. The guests who had once laughed now stood still, their polished smiles replaced by a quiet reckoning. Elias, the young waiter, lowered his phone. He didn't need to film anymore, the world was already watching. A tremor passed through Victoria's voice. "You think this makes you righteous? You ruined lives tonight." Amara turned slowly. "No," she said. "I revealed who was already doing that quietly behind contracts and champagne." Richard rose shakily from his seat, trying to salvage dignity. "You'll regret this. The market has no mercy." Amara's expression didn't change. Neither does the truth. Flashes burst from every corner as photographers captured the image that would flood tomorrow's front pages, the billionaire family frozen in disbelief, facing the woman they once mocked. Malik leaned close. "It's done," he murmured. Amara nodded. "No," she said softly, "it's begun." Because this wasn't just the collapse of a partnership, it was the collapse of a pattern. The pattern where people like her were invited only to decorate someone else's power. She stepped down from the stage, each heel strike echoing like punctuation. Guests parted to let her pass, not from fear but from recognition. One woman whispered, "She didn't just end a deal, she ended an era." Amara paused by the exit, looked back once at the broken spectacle of privilege, and said almost to herself, "The empire wasn't mine to end. It ended itself the moment it forgot respect." And with that, she left the ballroom quietly, completely, and unmistakably victorious. Outside the ballroom, the night air hit like truth, cool, sharp, unfiltered. Behind her, chaos bloomed. Reporters shouting questions, bodyguards rushing to escort the Vaughns through a side exit, PR teams scrambling like ants around a collapsing hill. But Amara didn't look back. She didn't have to. Inside, her words were still echoing, replaying in every mind that had heard them. Malik followed a few paces behind, phone in hand. "It's everywhere," he said, scrolling through the flood of headlines. "CNN, Reuters, every financial blog, you're the top story before midnight." Amara gave a small nod. "Good. Let the truth circulate faster than denial ever could." Her car was already waiting at the curb, sleek and silent. As she stepped toward it, the young waiter Elias jogged out through the hotel doors, slightly out of breath. "Miss Lewis," he called. "Wait." She turned, calm but warm now, the storm settling into grace. He hesitated, then said, "What you did in there, I've never seen anything like it. People like me, we deal with that kind of disrespect every day, but tonight he swallowed hard. You showed them what dignity looks like." Amara's expression softened. She reached into her clutch and pulled out a simple business card embossed only with her name. "Elias Wright," he nodded, stunned. "Send your resume. I'm expanding my hospitality division. I like people who notice the truth." He blinked, caught between disbelief and gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered. She smiled faintly. "Don't thank me. Just keep your integrity. It's rarer than gold." As he stepped back, Malik approached, voice low. "Vaughn Capital just suspended trading. Richards resigned. Their lawyers are already calling." Amara slipped into the car unbothered. "They can call. We'll answer in silence." The door closed with a satisfying click, not the sound of ending but of conclusion. Through the tinted glass, the hotel shimmered behind her, suddenly smaller, like a memory finally contained. She looked out at the city lights as the car began to move. "You know, Malik," she said, "people think power means control. It doesn't. It means choice." He nodded. "And you made yours." Her gaze didn't waver. "No, I became mine." Somewhere behind them, the ballroom lights flickered out the final curtain on arrogance disguised as class. And as the car disappeared into the night, one thing became clear. Justice doesn't always arrive in sirens or courtrooms. Sometimes it walks out of a ballroom wearing white, silent, and unstoppable. By morning, the story had circled the globe. Every major outlet carried the same image: Amara Lewis walking away from the ballroom in her white gown, eyes, forward expression serene. The headline varied from country to country, but the message was universal. Black CEO ends, $30B, merger after public humiliation, power redefined. Stock analysts called it the most public corporate reckoning of the decade. Social media called it justice served cold. And for once, those two worlds agreed. In a glass office high above the skyline, Amara stood with Malik, watching the sunrise. The light reflected across the city's towers like fire made of gold. Below news, crews camped outside Vaughn Capital's headquarters, catching live footage of employees carrying boxes to waiting cars. Malik lowered his phone. Richard Vaughn just resigned officially. His son deleted every social account. Their board's calling this an ethical reset. Amara didn't respond immediately. She watched the morning light creep across the floor, steady and unhurried, just like truth. "You know," Malik continued, "you could have just walked out last night. You didn't have to end them." Amara turned slightly. "I didn't end them," she said softly. "They did that the moment they mistook status for worth." He smiled faintly. "You think the world got the message?" She nodded once. "They always do when the silence is loud enough." Across the room, a television played muted clips from the gala, the laughter, the insult, the reversal. Reporters dissected every second. But Amara didn't need to hear it. Her work wasn't revenge. It was restoration. Elias's name flashed on her phone, an email this time. "Thank you for believing in people who see." She smiled and closed the message. The young man didn't know yet, but his life had already changed. So had the narrative of who belonged in rooms like that. Amara walked to the window, her reflection merging with the city beyond. The world had a new face of power, quiet, deliberate, unyielding. She spoke softly, almost to herself. I don't need to prove I belong anywhere. I build the rooms I walk into. Malik turned toward her. And what now? She glanced back, a calm fire in her eyes. Now, we build better ones. The camera would fade there, her silhouette against the sunrise, the city waking beneath her. No applause, no vengeance, just a woman who turned humiliation into history. Because justice, her voice would echo in the silence, doesn't shout, it arrives.